So I'm sure we're all familiar with the story of Tarzan, but in case you don't really remember, here's a little refresher. In the 1999 Disney film, Tarzan is a recently orphaned baby and Kala is a gorilla mother who recently lost her own infant. Kala adopts Tarzan much to the displeasure of her mate and pack leader, Kerchak. He's chilling, and then there's a bunch of colonizers who show up, Tarzan falls in love, there's a murderer in there somewhere, and he gets one of the most brutal Disney deaths. Blah blah blah, you get the picture. We aren't really interested in the budding romance between Jane and Tarzan, though. What we are more interested in is this. The adoption of a human baby by a gorilla. It seems kind of out there, right? Like, a gorilla wouldn't actually adopt a human infant. Right? Well... So, first and foremost, we should differentiate a few things. There's this thing in primate behavior called alloparenting. The alloparent, usually a female, takes care of the infant while their biological mother is out hunting or gathering or something along those lines. A lot of the time, alloparenting is seen as a precursor to adoptive behavior. Adoption, that usually happens whenever the child no longer has contact with their biological parent. So either the parent died or the parent was killed by the adopted parents. As far as we're aware, adoption doesn't happen that often in the wild. A lot of the time, adoption is facilitated in captivity, but even then it's hard to facilitate, and a lot of times the infant just dies. There's a theory that adoption happens more often than we think, though. The theory is that adoption is so successful that the adopted infant is so thoroughly integrated into the society that there's no difference between the adopted infant and a biological infant of that pack. But what about cross-species adoption? What does the research show about that? So a few minutes ago whenever I said that adoption happens very rarely in the wild? Well, it's even more rare for cross-species. So because of this, there's very little research that has to do with cross-species adoption. So a lot of this you have to take with a grain of salt. But the research that does exist, what does it tell us? A study by Azar et al. Documented the adoption of a marmoset monkey by Capuchins. 2 Capuchins took care of the marmoset, nursing and taking care of this baby for about a year. This marmoset was actually pretty well integrated into the Capuchin society. They traveled with the Capuchins, they ate with them, they were nursed, they responded to vocalizations, and even the dominant males tolerated the marmoset. But all was not well. The Capuchins weren't always able to take care of the marmoset as well as they would a fellow Capuchin. Sometimes the marmoset was left behind by the Capuchin monkeys since marmosets are so much smaller, and sometimes the Capuchins didn't really respond to the marmoset's vocalizations. There was another brief study done by Oswald et al. That showed a tern adopting a ring-billed gull. However, the ring-billed gull died shortly after adoption due to neglect by the terns. Azar et al. Proposed that certain specifications should be met before an adoption can take place. These specifications include that the adoptive parents should be already attached to the adopted infant. Another thing is that the adopted infant should not incur any extra costs that a biological infant doesn't. So that means that the adopted infant shouldn't require more milk, require more feeding, require more energy, stuff like that. And also, the milk of the adopted parents should be compatible with the infant. So what does this tell us? Is it possible for a human baby to be adopted by a gorilla? Jury's still out on it. I would personally say no. Is it possible? Yeah. Probable? Not really. So we can't really know if Tarzan would survive in real life unless there was a real life case study being done. And it's not exactly ethical to send a baby out into the wilderness to be adopted by a gorilla. So all we can do in the meantime is watch Tarzan with suspended disbelief and enjoy the music by Phil Collins.